All right, there's not going to be a live stream today simply because I'm going to visit my dad this weekend, so it'll be easier to do it here and then upload it and then go there. By the way, please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. Subscribe to me on Minds. I always try to notify people on Minds when I have a new video. Looks like this video is kind of freezing up. So, uh, we're going to also on BitChute, by the way. BitChute, pretty consistent over there. In case you can't see my new videos. So the topics for today, very short. Don't have a lot of time today, but we're gonna do a little bit of unpacking uh, I guess the repercussions of the last 2 days of debates and also the big tech censorship issue. Uh, I think we'll go through the big tech censorship issue first. They are censoring Veritas. They're trying to get Veritas to be discredited as a source, and I don't think it's really going to work because the fact is that what Veritas is exposing does have legal ramifications, a number of these things. Google and the other tech companies. Okay, we all acknowledge that they have the right to, uh, they don't have they don't have to be completely open to the federal government. Every business has the right to keep certain practices secret. However, businesses do not have the right to infringe on the rights of their customers, to scam their customers. When you have people who are users, people like, it's not just me. By the way, I am a Google customer because I use the Google Music app. I've bought a subscription to it, which incidentally gives me access to a lot of their other stuff. So I am a customer of Google. I pay for that stuff, for the use of that media. And I feel that it is unethical for them to say, well, we're going to choose for you which of our products, which you have bought access to, you're going to be able to use, even though we never told you. That's really the problem. And then for the casual user, by the way, they're also in a way, they're customers of Google. Even if you're not a full paid subscriber to Google through the music app or whatever it might be, you have you're basically watching their ads. So their implication that you are too dumb or too impressionable to choose what you want to watch is an infringement on your personal privacy and freedom. It says in here that this is even beyond that. So during their hearings in Washington, D.C., Google employees, I don't remember who, but a lot of them were denying allegations that they had a left-wing bias. And it appears now, if this is genuine, this is something that Tim Pool has covered. This is something that a number of other YouTubers have put out. There is actual guidance within Google for protests made on company time, and that's really the problem. Okay, it's fine if these employees are attending protests or voicing their political opinions on their own time. This appears to be a matter of official business that Google allows to be done on company time, using company facilities, using company assets, and that would make this, in fact, proof that it does take a biased stance on certain issues. In this case, it says a newly leaked doc shows coordination of protests through internal resist@google.com group. Suggested sites include resist, no ban, no wall, hashtag no Muslim ban, hashtag no wall, and an example chant from Palestine to Mexico, all the walls have got to go. It's almost, so let's look at the actual document here. They PDF this. That's why, Google, they would have done better not to have done this on something so easily accessible. I can make Google Docs very easily. And that's one of the reasons people like to use Google, because they've created an open source platform for a lot of things you want to do. I don't have Microsoft Office because I haven't paid for a subscription. So, you have here what to bring, do's and don'ts, know your rights, no violence. So, okay, so they're not engaging in open incitement to illegal acts. No shouting obscenities, don't escalate, don't feel obligated to stop at crosswalks. That's kind of ridiculous. Be careful, but the point is to disrupt, and a crosswalk can split up the group when it's large. No dangerous routes, even if it's on the route. Watch out for construction, heavy traffic. And then you have example chants over here. Yes, this would be proof that there is, there is explicit bias in Google among some of these people. Now, how pervasive it is, I don't know. But it shows that the company is not really sincere when it says that they don't put they don't place any sort of importance on furthering a political issue. It's a complete lie. They can't make that case. I think at this point, the people who are FTC or other regulatory bodies, I think that they do have grounds to look at some of these statements that Google has made in Congress and compare them to the facts that have been exposed and really bring down, consequences, including breaking up the company. And those people that think, well, you're infringing on the free market here. No, Google is actually they're giving what Google is doing is that they have a lot of tools that they put put to the use of the customer. Okay, you have Google Play. You have I know that Google has a book selling platform, which I don't remember. I think it's just called Google Books, and they are able to give the impression that they are a free market. But in reality, they are not a free market, and that would be a scam. That is something that you would say is, it's a fraud. It's false advertising. Now, are these things examples of crimes that they could be held legally liable for? I'm not going to make that determination. I think that this might be the what do you call it? The patient zero of a whole new area of law. We don't necessarily have a lot of precedents for this type of stuff. So I'll have to just watch out for what's going to happen soon. Now, as far as debates, that was a wild couple days. Some of my commentary, I know many of you probably disagree a bit because we come from different perspectives. I didn't see any reactions where people were saying, "Oh, how could you have said that?" Eric Swalwell did well. I think people, when they see somebody do well in a debate, they understand that that person is performing well. They don't necessarily endeavor to support that person. I remember 8 years ago, whenever what's that guy's name? Rick Santorum was running. He didn't do bad in the debates. Newt Gingrich didn't do bad in the debates, and I think they represented what they were standing for very well in the Republican debates. I think in the Democratic debates in 2008, you could say that Mike Gravel did very well. Dennis Kucinich, I don't think did too poorly, but it doesn't mean you support them. So you just have to look at something and assess it honestly and give your most true opinion to what you're seeing happening. So I think that the natural reaction that I'm seeing coming out right now is that Joe Biden is apparently his campaign. I don't know if it's imploding yet. I think he's in a crisis. You can see here this shot of. Now the funny part is that the composition. Look, I took high school photography, and I wouldn't say that I'm any award-winning photographer, but one of the things they teach us is composition, and you want the subject that you're trying to capture to be central to the photo, and in this case, that's not what's happening because they include Bernie in the middle. But what are you going to do? I guess they decided to include the whole photo, and they go through, and we're not going to read the whole thing, but Essentially, they wag their finger at Biden for defending his position on forced busing and some of this stuff about Eastland and Talmadge. Listen, what he did is not as important as the way that his vulnerability was exploited by Kamala Harris, and that's why she won the night. And it could be that a lot of support is going to flood from Joe Biden to some of these other candidates who are either a little more closer to the center or slightly to the left of him, like Harris, like Elizabeth Warren. And when I say slightly to the left, I mean that in reality, a lot of these people already agree to some of the really rank and basic leftist crap anyway. So it's not as big of a difference. If you look at this photo here, back in 2016, Bernie Sanders was considered a huge radical. But last night, almost all these candidates were saying, yes, healthcare is a human right. Yes, they were saying, we don't believe that people should be deported if they come here illegally. We don't believe it should be a crime. There was Julian Castro who had, I believe, proposed that they repeal one of the clauses in the federal criminal code about illegal immigration, and people endorsed that. So the idea that Bernie Sanders is a super radical member or a super radical candidate, it's not as sharp as it was back in 2016, because a lot of these candidates have moved further on the spectrum on a number of these issues. And depending on who you look at it, it's either a huge threat to what they want because they want Bernie Sanders, who they see as the authentic person, or B, and you're going to hear this eventually if Bernie can't get his poll numbers up. B, some people will soon spin it as, well, I mean, look, Bernie, he didn't win, but his agenda won because his agenda is being adopted. And that's really the key. The key is that Bernie Sanders has affected the Democratic Party deeply, and it's yet to be seen whether it will be a success for them, although I would say a success for them would be a failure for the country and a huge threat to our future as a leading economic power, as a place where people enjoy, personal liberties, things like that. The Bill of Rights under these people will be trampled on because they will always make it an issue of justice rather than an issue of liberty. People on the left always talk about justice, but they don't know how to define the parameters of justice. They don't believe in laws. They believe laws are governed by morality. They're not governed by morality. Okay, in most societies, laws are not governed by morality. And in many cases, a law will be passed for practical reasons. And that's really one of the reasons that I would say if these people would be elected, any of these people, and that includes, sorry to say that, Tulsi Gabbard, I think it would be a threat to the liberty of this country. And we have a problem once that happens. Here we go with Clay Travis with his debate analysis, which was, I think it was very important hearing his viewpoint. He's not a politician. He's not a politics reporter, sports reporter, but very interesting takes sometimes. And I've also criticized some of his takes, but this is interesting.
Joe Biden was really bad. He sounded old. He didn't speak clearly. He oftentimes stumbled over his answers. And I'm not necessarily going to attribute it solely to his age, because Bernie Sanders was standing right next to him, and Bernie was out of completely normal mind control Bernie, right? He's screaming at us. He's yelling at us. He looks like the crazy professor from Back to the Future. But Bernie is quick. He responds smoothly and articulately when he is questioned. I don't know how much of that might be that Bernie has been in the trenches fighting in a campaign more recently than Biden has. I don't know what happened here, but Biden looked really bad. All right. And it started early for Biden when that idiot Congressman Eric Swalwell, or whatever his name is, we're going to get to his stupid comment about how he looks at what his kids wear when they go to school every morning so he can identify them in a morgue. I mean, what kind of world do you live in if you're saying that or even thinking about that? I send 2 kids to school every day. I can barely remember what they're wearing. I don't hardly know what I'm wearing unless I look down right now. But early on in the debate, he attacked Biden based on his age. How Biden couldn't have anticipated that his age was going to be a part of the discussion, I have no earthly idea. But how did he not have an immediate response to that? That, I thought, was a big flaw. And look, I like Joe Biden. I voted for Joe Biden twice to be vice president. I still think Joe Biden, at least on paper, has the best of the resumes to go after Donald Trump because he can go directly into the industrial Midwest and compete for all these guys that flip their votes from Obama to Donald Trump and that changed the outcome in Michigan, changed the outcome in Ohio, changed the outcome in Wisconsin. All of those states, Pennsylvania is where this battleground is actually going to be fought. But Joe Biden wasn't ready. I mean, Joe Biden looked like the number 1 seed that comes out into the NCAA tournament. He looked like UVA last year and gets run by Mount St. Mary's.
Yeah, so that's a very perceptive outtake, and I like the college basketball analogy, like a number 1 seed getting knocked out by a 16 seed. I don't know if his campaign has completely collapsed yet. I'm hearing, I just heard about Biden, one of his bundlers, is pulling out of his campaign. It says here, that would be very interesting. Joe Biden loses support of top campaign fundraiser in Bay Area after comments on segregationists and the Hyde Amendment. So, we don't need to read through this, but there's other news going on with this debate. The debate fallout. So the people I think who are toast, who are not coming back, they might be in the next debates, but it's not going to matter. The people who I think are dead in the water are Beto. Tim Ryan, I think, was just scorched by Tulsi Gabbard. I don't know how he recovers from that. I would probably say that, if Julian Castro doesn't enjoy a rise in the polls, a real tangible rise in the polls after the debates, he's toast. I don't know what he has to do now after that embarrassment on Wednesday. Not specifically just him, but the whole thing with the Spanish and blah 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 and the pandering. Yeah, those people, they're in trouble. Marianne Williamson came out and apparently people are looking at her. She's a real curiosity. There's footage of her juxtaposed with a Pat Benatar video, which is very humorous. I don't have it with me, so you'll have to excuse me. Who else? Andrew Yang. I will reiterate this, and I actually wrote something to some friends about it. I would say, let me see here. I didn't prepare it. I didn't prepare to read it yet, but I'll read it now. So Andrew Yang proved yesterday that while he is a more prudent and reasonable sounding liar, he is a liar nonetheless. I am still urging anyone in Ohio to vote in the Democrat 2020 primaries, even if you are a Trump supporter, but only for Tulsi Gabbard. She is the last candidate on their side with any semblance of integrity. The rest are soul-sucking imposters. Yang's dishonesty is pretty fundamental on 2 levels. Lying about Russian interference in the election and making believe that the UBI benefit system will actually function the way he's proposing. To explain point 2, since the first one is a larger discussion. So the Russia discussion is something much broader that we could tackle a different time that I think many of you probably know anyway. So we'll move past that one. But the first point is Yang markets his policy as a replacement for other welfare benefits. Would that have been possible? There'd be a discussion to be had. However, let's remember that these programs are drafted and voted for by Congress. Let's assume that Democrats won the Senate in 2020 and kept the House. They would have to use the nuclear option to avoid needing 60 Senate votes for the UBI measure. So that's very important. He has to be able to pass this measure. And we know that the Democrats either get very wobbly for certain programs they think could get them, unelected or whatever. That's why Obama had such a difficult time, because many of the Democrats, despite what we think of them as being a very far left party, back in 2008, half of the party was very far left. On a national level, they were getting further to the left. But, in some states, they just weren't. In some of the states where there were Democratic senators, they were not far left. They were actually pretty centrist. And that's why Barack Obama was a failure in his first 2 years as far as the progressives are concerned. Not according to me, but according to them. The second point is any Democrat in either house would be tarred and feathered by their own supporters for withdrawing any entitlement. Yang would need to pass that with the approval of Schumer and the next speaker, or it won't reach the floor, and it is laughable to suggest they would jeopardize their assets for the UBI gamble. So that's what's so important for people to understand. Andrew Yang, let's forget the theory behind this. If he can't get the measure passed, and then, so let's say he gets elected president. What these black pillars don't understand is then he has to put his proposal to the House. The House has to agree to this to create this new agency, or whoever it is. Maybe it will be the Social Security Administration, and they would dispense the money, and they would have to allocate the money every year to every American citizen, $1,000, or every month, I guess, $1,000. All well and good. Can he get it passed in the House? Maybe. Can he get it passed in the Senate? He would need 60 votes unless he could get Republicans to go along with it. And that's assuming that the Democrats even win in the Senate. If the Republicans retain the Senate, Mitch McConnell, or let's say McConnell retires for 2020, which I don't see any sign of yet, but whoever takes the mantle as the Senate Majority Leader for the Republicans, let's say it was, for argument's sake, I don't know, John Cornyn. And they would say, look, we're not even going to put this to a vote. Screw you. It would be laughed away. And then what happens to the rest of Yang's term, where he'd have to campaign in 2022 in order to get sufficient majorities in both houses in order to pass the bill, and then he would waste the first 4 years trying to get UBI passed, which is I understand the urgency of what he's talking about with the automation. And I still don't know whether I believe UBI would be even useful in combating it. There are theories on both sides. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. I'm not going to call him a liar as far as the policy's validity. But people have to understand that Andrew Yang is not running for president, for all-powerful president of America. He's going to be basically a captive to the pleasure of Congress and the Supreme Court to some extent. If he can't pass a bill that will pass both houses of Congress to get this done, it doesn't matter. The other thing that is a problem that I mentioned in that post is that he's saying that it's going to be in place of all these other welfare benefits. Well, who else has agreed to that? No one. No one has agreed. Nobody, especially not on the Democratic side, which he needs. Nobody's agreeing to withdraw SNAP. No one's agreeing to end S-chip or whatever that other, the children's insurance program, all that stuff. Nobody's agreeing to end a lot of these housing subsidies. There's no consensus on any of this. So really, Andrew Yang is sitting up in the bleachers yelling about something that he thinks is very important, but it doesn't supersede any of the priorities of the other Democrats, which is to increase all of the other benefits much more, which takes precedence over UBI. So that's about it. I know there were a couple technical difficulties in this video, but it was made with a little bit of a time constraint. So thank you again for joining me, and please like, share, and subscribe. Also subscribe to me on Gab, Starscream85. You can find me on Minds.com, BitChute, and Subscribestar if you want to donate. All those are at Chef Leopard. and also on Parler if you want, at Razor Ray. A couple announcements coming next week when I have a little more time, and I'll talk to you later.